They walked past him every day, shoes polished, badges swinging, coffee in hand. Not once did they stop. Not once did they ask his name. But Marcus Reed, he saw everything. And when the time came, the quiet man in the security uniform would change the fate of the company they thought he served. My name's Marcus Reed. I'm 52 years old, and for nearly 2 decades, I've worn the same navy blue security uniform 6 nights a week. I work the graveyard shift at Brighton and Cole, one of the biggest corporate offices in downtown Atlanta. 12 floors of steel and glass, home to some of the city's most powerful people. And every night, I'm the one who keeps it safe. I check the doors, watch the cameras, clear the parking lot, and nod politely to the folks still working late. The ones who treat me like furniture with a name tag. I'm the one they trust to unlock their offices, escort their guests, and buzz them in when they forget their key cards. But never once, not in 18 years, has one of those executives stopped to ask me who I really am. They just see the security guy, black, middle-aged, invisible. And honestly, I was okay with that. I didn't need their approval. I kept my head down, did my job, and clocked out before sunrise. But I've seen more from that security desk than they'll ever realize. I've watched deals get made over whiskey at midnight. I've seen interns cry in the stairwell after being berated by a VP. I've overheard conversations no one meant for me to hear. I know who sneaks out early, who lies about expenses, and who treats people like dirt because they think their title lets them. But I never said a word. I just watched, listened, logged things away, until the day Richard Dane, CEO of Brighton and Cole, spilled his $7 latte in the lobby and pointed at me like I was some kind of street help. "Clean that up, security boy," he barked right in front of his staff, loud enough for everyone to hear. They laughed. He laughed. And me? I just stood there, holding my clipboard, staring at the mess slowly soaking into the marble. It wasn't the first time someone talked down to me. It wasn't even the worst. But something about the way he said it, like I wasn't even human, flipped a switch. I nodded, didn't say a word, wiped up the spill like always. But that night, while the city slept and the skyline glowed outside my booth, I sat back in my worn leather chair, folded my hands and whispered to myself, "It's time." Because what none of them knew, what not even Richard Dane could have imagined, was that I wasn't just the guy who guarded the doors. I owned part of what was inside them. It was a Monday morning, one of those early shifts when the sun hadn't quite cleared the skyline, and the building was just waking up. I was standing in the front lobby of Brighton and Cole, clipboard in hand, checking off routine entries, making sure the night deliveries were accounted for, and nodding to the cleaning crew as they rolled their carts back down to the service elevator. The marble floor was still damp in spots, freshly mopped. I'd radioed upstairs to let them know the lobby was slick, as usual, but that didn't stop the CEO, Richard Dane, from storming through the revolving doors like he owned the damn city. Tall, square-jawed, with hair that probably cost more to cut than I made in a week. Richard always moved like the world owed him space. His entourage of junior executives followed close behind, laughing too loud at jokes they probably didn't even understand. Then it happened. One of them, might have been his assistant, might have been one of those copy-paste finance bros, spilled coffee as they passed the check-in desk. A big splash of dark roast hit the floor right near the elevators. Richard stopped mid-stride, looked down at the mess, then turned to me with that smirk he always wore when talking to anyone not in a suit. "Hey, security boy," he said, loud enough to bounce off the glass. "Clean that up, would you? Before someone important slips." The whole lobby froze. Conversations cut off. Footsteps paused. Even the receptionist turned in her chair. And then he laughed. That kind of laugh that says you're beneath me, and I want everyone to see it. His crew followed suit, some snorting behind their coffee cups, others chuckling like it was just another harmless jab. I stood still, clipboard in one hand, the other gripping the pen so tight I thought it might snap. He didn't call me Marcus, didn't say please, didn't acknowledge the 18 years I'd given this company. To him, I was just a man in uniform, black, quiet, forgettable, a servant in a lobby full of kings. My cheeks burned, not from embarrassment, but from the heat of every moment I'd bitten my tongue for the sake of peace. Every time someone skipped the good morning or tossed me their trash without looking up. Every time they looked through me like I was just another part of the building. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. I nodded, walked calmly to the janitor's closet, pulled out the yellow "Caution, Wet Floor" sign, and set it down near the spill. Then I went back and grabbed paper towels, kneeling to wipe the mess while they boarded the elevator. Still laughing, still looking back at me like I was nothing. But while my hands cleaned their coffee, my mind was already racing. Because I wasn't just the man they laughed at. I was the man they never saw coming. I didn't go home that night with rage. I went home with a plan. After the mop dried and the lobby cleared, I clocked out like always. Same punch card, same security exit. But my hands were shaking just a little. Not from anger, but from something I hadn't felt in years. Resolve. I sat on the edge of my bed in my small apartment on the south side, peeling off my boots, staring at the framed photo above the dresser. My father-in-law, Walter Harrington, smiling in his Sunday suit. The man never made it past 10th grade, but he knew how to build wealth quietly. He invested early in Brighton and Cole back when it was just a small logistics firm with 10 employees and a rented storefront. Before he passed, he left me and my late wife a parting gift. Stock certificates, real ones, certified, notarized, tucked in a sealed envelope. At the time, I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't come from money. I'd never owned anything besides an old pickup and a wedding ring. But Walter told me one thing before he died. Hold on to this, Marcus. Don't cash it out. One day you'll need it. So I did. Through layoffs, through funerals, through rent hikes and frozen wages. I held it. What no one in that company knew, not Richard Dane, not the board, not even the HR lady who gave me a frozen turkey one Thanksgiving, was that I owned 15% of Brighton and Cole. Quietly, legally, no bells, no headlines. I could have cashed out years ago and bought a house somewhere warmer. But I stayed. Why? Because I saw things. I saw black and brown employees passed up for promotions, while less qualified white managers got the title. I saw single moms in accounting work 60 hours a week while the executives took golf trips to Pebble Beach. I saw janitors fired with 2 days' notice after 20 years of service. And I saw Richard Dane, over and over, profit off of other people's silence. That night, I pulled out the envelope from the lockbox under my bed. My hands didn't shake this time. Inside were the original certificates, the trust documents, the legal transfers, everything I needed to prove that I was a major stakeholder in the company I had cleaned for nearly 2 decades. But stock wasn't enough. I needed proof. Hard evidence that what I knew, what I'd heard, seen, suspected, wasn't just memory. It was fact. So the next night at work, I started paying closer attention. I pulled up archived security footage. I kept copies of shredded papers from the office trash. I took pictures of invoices, staff memos, and even overheard calls on speakerphones left unattended after hours. Nothing flashy, just slow, quiet documentation, like stacking bricks. The difference was now I had leverage, and every dirty document I collected was a step closer to ending Richard Dane's reign. He thought I was just another black man pushing buttons and opening doors. But he forgot one thing. Some doors swing both ways, and I held the keys. Every night after that, I didn't just patrol, I documented. The lobby cameras? I knew their angles like the back of my hand. The blind spots? I used them to slip into copy rooms, executive lounges, and empty boardrooms where discarded agendas and confidential memos got tossed like trash. I started carrying a small notebook in my inside jacket pocket, black leather, no logo, no name, where I jotted every detail that didn't sit right. Time, location, who was there, what was said. It was my own private archive of corporate rot. Richard Dane made it easy. He was careless after hours, talking loud on calls he thought no one could hear. I once caught him on speakerphone, bragging to someone overseas about how cutting from the bottom boosts the top. Another night, he laughed about letting go of the diversity manager because optics don't matter if you control the narrative. I wrote it all down. The janitorial closet in the sub-level became my evidence locker. Tucked behind stacks of toilet paper and unopened soap dispensers, I stashed printed copies of suspicious memos, screenshots from camera footage, and even bits of shredded documents I'd taped back together. Expense reports that didn't add up, firing notices that violated policy, email printouts where employees of color were referred to as high risk for culture fit, and I wasn't alone. One night, Miguel, the overnight janitor, pulled me aside and whispered, "You collecting receipts too?" I didn't answer, just looked at him. He nodded and slipped me a flash drive. "There's more," he said. "They've been hiding cuts to the safety budget. Layoffs coming, but only from the lower floors, you know?" I knew. Every piece of data I gathered confirmed what I'd long suspected. Brighton and Cole wasn't just mismanaged. It was rigged, designed to reward the rich, shield the corrupt, and keep folks like me quiet and grateful. But I wasn't quiet anymore. I scanned every document at home using a printer I bought off Craigslist. I saved it all to a secure drive. I sent encrypted backups to Tom, my lawyer and friend, who was building a case stronger than steel. One night, as I sat alone in the guard booth, watching Richard laugh on camera with a glass of bourbon in hand, I flipped open my notebook and wrote just one sentence. He doesn't know he's already lost, because I had the proof, and soon the world would see it too. The morning of the shareholders' meeting, I walked into Brighton and Cole like I had every day for the past 18 years. Badge clipped to my chest, Navy uniform pressed, boots polished. My old security cart rattled slightly as I pushed it across the marble lobby, like always. But today, there was something extra in my pocket, a small leather folder packed with truth. The boardroom on the 12th floor buzzed with the usual tension. Suits everywhere, lanyards with platinum tags, muffled small talk about quarterly returns and foreign partnerships. And at the head of the long glass table, Richard Dane, cool as ever in his tailored suit, wearing a smirk like a crown. He didn't notice me at first. Why would he? I waited just outside the double doors until I got the signal. A simple text from Tom. "Ready. Now." I pushed open the doors. Silence followed. Heads turned, eyebrows raised. A few board members looked confused. Others looked annoyed. And Richard? He laughed. That same condescending bark he always used when belittling someone, lower on the totem pole. "What's this?" he said loudly. "Security walk in the wrong room?" More chuckles. I took a step forward, calm, steady, and said, "No, Richard. I'm right where I'm supposed to be." His smirk flickered. "Whatever this is, take it downstairs. We're in session." "I'm aware," I said, pulling the leather folder from my jacket. "As a major shareholder, I'm entitled to be here." Now the room really fell quiet. Richard blinked. "Shareholder?" I opened the folder, laid it on the table, and began sliding out documents. 15% stake, I said clearly, inherited, certified, and fully vested. And that gives me not only the right to be here, but the power to call for a vote. Gasps, whispered curses. Eyes darted across the table. Richard stood up, face hardening. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I looked around. "Then let's talk about the real numbers, shall we?" One by one, I laid out the evidence. Falsified earnings reports, discriminatory termination emails, shredded memos I'd pieced back together, security footage of Richard making cost-cutting decisions while drinking bourbon in his office after hours. And then, with my voice calm and steady, I said the words I'd waited years to say. "I call for a motion to remove Richard Dane as CEO, effective immediately." The board members looked at one another, some pale, some nodding slightly. Then Tom walked in, briefcase in hand, legal documents at the ready. The vote wasn't close. And Richard? He stood frozen for a moment before slamming his fist on the table. "This isn't over," he growled, storming past me toward the door. But it was, because the man he'd mocked in front of a lobby full of people had just taken his seat at the table. And I didn't need a title to prove I belonged. Richard Dane didn't walk out quietly. The moment that vote passed, his face turned the color of raw brick. He barked something under his breath, too low to catch, but his body language screamed fury. He yanked open the boardroom doors and stormed into the hallway like a man who'd just lost a kingdom. And in a way, he had. I stayed behind. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just gathered my folder, nodded at the board, and left the room without a word. Because for me, this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. For every overnight worker who never got overtime, for every intern who cried in the stairwell, for every black employee labeled not a culture fit after doing twice the work for half the recognition. By that evening, the story had broken. My phone lit up like fireworks. News outlets across Atlanta ran the headline, "Security Guard Oasts CEO in Shareholders Shakeup." They didn't get all the facts right, but they got the message. The next day, the SEC announced a preliminary investigation into Brighton and Cole's financial practices. The leaked documents I'd given to Tom, they were now in the hands of regulators. The fake numbers, the hidden accounts, the layoffs pushed through without cause. All of it was under review. Richard's assets were frozen within 48 hours. His $3 million condo in Buckhead? Seized. His yacht docked in Savannah? Gone. The man who once mocked me with a latte and a smirk was now a cautionary tale. And the internet didn't go easy on him either. A video leaked from building security, him slamming file cabinets, knocking over chairs in a full-blown tantrum right after the meeting. Someone added dramatic music. Memes popped up overnight. CEO gets fired by security, loses his security. It went viral in under 6 hours. Former employees came out of the woodwork with their own stories. He once told me I should wear makeup if I wanted to keep my job. He fired me for asking about maternity leave. He said the only diversity we needed was diversity of thought. His old buddies in the boardroom? They distanced themselves fast. One even sent me a quiet email. "You did what none of us had the spine to do." But I didn't care about their approval. I cared about change. Because now the company wasn't just ride of a tyrant, it had a chance to become something better. And I wasn't done, not by a long shot. Brighton and Cole felt different after that. The marble floors still gleamed. The elevator still chimed the same way. But something in the air had shifted, like the tension that once gripped the building had finally loosened its claws. For the first time in years, people looked each other in the eye instead of over their shoulders. I didn't take an executive title. I didn't care for parking spaces or corner offices, but the board offered me something else, a new role, Director of Workplace Ethics and Culture. I accepted, not for the prestige, but for the chance to rebuild from the ground up. My first stop? The break room. I installed a real coffee machine, not the one that wheezed and spat out bitter sludge. I replaced the torn vending machine labels. Then I put a suggestion box right by the fridge with a sign, "No idea is too small." I'm listening. The first note I got, "Better gloves for janitorial staff. The cheap ones rip by noon." Done. Next, more diversity in hiring. Too many departments look the same. We launched a partnership with local HBCUs and community colleges by the end of the quarter. And the biggest request of all, treat people like they matter. That one wasn't written down. It was just everywhere. In the way employees started saying thank you again, in the way junior staffers dared to speak up during meetings, in the way folks smiled a little longer at the security desk on their way in. I brought Miguel, the janitor who slipped me that flash drive, into every safety meeting. I asked Letitia from HR to co-lead the ethics task force. I walked the floors every day, not to check, but to listen. And one afternoon, a young intern, barely out of college, stopped me by the elevator. "You're the guy who took down Richard, right?" I nodded. She smiled. "My dad's been a night guard his whole life. He says you gave people like him hope." That hit me harder than any boardroom vote ever could. This wasn't just about kicking out a corrupt CEO. This was about showing what happens when the so-called invisible decide they won't be ignored anymore. Brighton and Cole wasn't perfect, but it was healing, slowly. And every time I walked past that lobby where Richard once humiliated me, I didn't feel bitterness. I felt purpose. Because sometimes starting over doesn't mean wiping the slate clean. It means building on the cracks and making it stronger than before. Richard Dane didn't disappear into the shadows. Not right away. A month after he was ousted, He popped up on a low-tier business talk show, still wearing a crisp suit, still slicking his hair back like nothing had happened. But you could see it in his eyes. The edge was gone. He sat on camera ranting about how he'd been set up by a disgruntled employee with a mop. I rolled my eyes. Then the host dropped a bombshell. Security footage, leaked, uncut, in full color, of Richard losing it in the boardroom after I called for the vote. He was shouting, flipping chairs, knocking over a tray of catered snacks, veins bulging in his neck. Someone had added dramatic music under it. Within hours, it was everywhere. Ex-CEO meltdown trended on social media. The meme factory went into overdrive. They turned him into a punchline. A man who once thought he was untouchable reduced to a clip played for laughs. Even his former allies distanced themselves. One of the senior board members resigned quietly. Another issued a statement about reassessing corporate leadership values. But Richard wasn't done trying to claw his way back. A few weeks later, a man in a gray suit showed up in the Brighton and Cole lobby with legal papers in hand. A lawsuit, filed by Richard himself. He was accusing me of manipulating the board, of fraud, of weaponizing my position as a shareholder. I met the lawyer in the conference room, calm, prepared. I slid across a notarized copy of my late father-in-law's will. Alongside it, stock transfer certificates, trust documentation, and a signed letter from the board confirming my voting rights. The lawyer's hands shook as he read. He stood, gathered his papers, and left without another word. By noon, the story had hit every major outlet. Former CEO's lawsuit dismissed as frivolous. The judge's opinion was clear. There was no fraud, no deception, just a man unable to accept that power was no longer his. And the best part? Every cent Richard poured into that lawsuit, attorney fees, court costs, PR cleanup, dug him deeper into the hole. His savings dwindled. His last few investment partners pulled out. One headline read, "From boardroom to bankruptcy, the fall of Richard Dane." I didn't celebrate. I didn't post a thing. But that night, sitting in my modest apartment with a glass of iced tea and the evening news humming low, I allowed myself one small smile. Because when people like Richard fall, they don't fall because you pushed them. They fall because they built their throne on lies and then forgot who was holding the floor beneath them. The emails came slowly at first, just one or two, then 5, then dozens. Some from people I'd worked with years ago, others I'd never even met. Most of them came from company addresses I didn't recognize. Warehouse workers, night shift dispatchers, junior assistants from other branches. Folks whose names never showed up in board reports, but whose hands kept the place running. They all started the same way. "You don't know me, but I just wanted to say thank you." One came from a receptionist who'd been laid off during a restructuring Richard claimed was necessary. She wrote, "I used to cry in my car before work. He made us feel replaceable. But you reminded us we mattered." Another came from a warehouse supervisor out in Missouri. "I've worked here 11 years. I've seen 3 different CEOs. None of them did what you did. You didn't just speak up, you stood up." Some messages were short. "You gave me hope. You made me proud to work here again. For once, someone saw us." And I'll never forget the one from Jamal, a janitor I hadn't seen since my early years on the job. He was let go after taking too many sick days because he was caring for his wife after a stroke. Richard fired him without hesitation. Jamal wrote, "You don't remember me, but we used to split vending machine sandwiches on break." I watched the story unfold on TV with my daughter. She cried. She asked if I knew you. I told her, "He's the one who never looked down on me." That one broke me. I'd never thought of myself as a hero. Still don't. But for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about Richard Dane's fall. It was about everyone who'd been stepped over, silenced, passed up, laid off, or laughed at behind closed doors. The invisible ones. People like me. People like Jamal. People who showed up, did the work, and got none of the credit. And now their voices were showing up too. In inboxes, in meetings, in the break room, where someone pinned a photo of the new executive team with a handwritten note underneath. built from the ground up. No branding, no PR campaign. Just real people saying, thank you for reminding them we exist. And I carried that with me every step I took down those halls. Not with pride, but with purpose. Because when you've been invisible for so long, being seen isn't a reward, it's a right. I never set out to make headlines. I didn't wake up one morning thinking I'd take down a CEO or shake up a boardroom. I was just a man doing his job, punching in, staying late, holding a door open when no one noticed. I didn't need applause. I just wanted to be treated with dignity. But the truth is, dignity doesn't come from the job title on your badge. It comes from knowing your worth, even when others pretend not to see it. For 18 years, I watched from the sidelines while decisions were made in rooms I wasn't invited to. I listened, I paid attention, and when the time came, I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth. And it was louder than any boardroom speech ever could be. This story isn't just about Richard Dane. It's about every working person who's been overlooked, talked down to, dismissed, or told to know their place. It's about the janitors, the night guards, the cafeteria workers, the delivery drivers, the ones who keep everything running while others take the credit. To anyone who's ever been made to feel small, invisible, or less than, you are not the background. You are the foundation. And when you finally stand tall, when you decide your silence has gone on long enough, they won't know what hit them. So no, I'm not a hero. I'm just Marcus Reed, a security guard, a shareholder, a man who got tired of being underestimated and did something about it. And if I can do that, so can you. Because the moment you believe you're enough, you are more powerful than they'll ever be ready for.